We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
Neil Alden Armstrong was born on August 5, 1930, in Wapakoneta, Ohio. At age 17, he entered Purdue University and began his academic career studying aerospace engineering. He funded his college tuition by committing to 2 years of service in the Navy, which ultimately thrust him into the Korean War in 1951. Armstrong flew a total of 78 missions over Korea, receiving numerous medals and awards for his combat missions. Following the Korean War, Neil returned to college at Purdue and ultimately earned his master's degree in aerospace engineering at the University of Southern California. His love of flying and engineering led him to Edwards Air Force Base, where he became a skilled test pilot who often flew experimental aircraft for the military. One of the aircraft flown by Armstrong was the experimental X-15, manufactured by North American Aviation. He would fly the aircraft 7 times, often reaching altitudes of more than 39 miles and speeds of 4,000 miles per hour. At the time, this would be the highest altitudes that humans were routinely reaching, but little did he know that this would be just the beginning of his lofty adventures. Armstrong's journey to become an astronaut would land him as one of the New Nine, the group that would be selected to follow up the famous Mercury 7 astronauts of the late 1950s. Long since departed from his military duty, Neil Armstrong would become the first civilian astronaut, serving with others who were routinely active duty military pilots. His first journey to space would be on Gemini 8 as the command pilot, along with fellow astronaut Dave Scott. Launched in 1966, it would be the most ambitious mission yet, one where the first rendezvous and docking with another space vehicle would be performed. This was a critical step in our space program that would be necessary if we were to make the journey to the surface of the moon. Armstrong's first involvement in NASA's Apollo program was as the backup commander for the Apollo 8 mission, the first mission to the moon by humans from Earth. While the crew of Apollo 8 were making their historic orbits of the moon, Neil was offered the role of the commander of Apollo 11, the first mission slated to land on the surface of the moon and return safely to this Earth. The crew of Apollo 11 would consist of Neil Armstrong as commander, Edwin Buzz Aldrin as lunar module pilot, and Michael Collins as the command module pilot. The role of the first human to step foot on the moon was given to Neil Armstrong, because the management of NASA's Apollo program knew him to be a skilled aviator and engineer, but also because they knew him as a person who did not have a large ego and would handle the role with dignity and humility. The launch of Apollo 11 occurred as planned in the warm, humid Florida skies of July 16, 1969. Over the next 2.5 days, the crew of Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins would make their way to the moon, while sending back video of their routines and duties while they made their perilous journey. On July 20th, the crew arrived at the moon and orbited it several times, checking and double-checking the mechanical systems of the lunar module landing craft with the call sign Eagle. A short time later, it was time to separate from the command module named Columbia and make their way to the surface of the moon and write the next chapter of human history. As the lunar module made its gradual descent to the surface of the moon, it was Neil Armstrong who was piloting the landing craft.
1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. We're go. Same type. We're go.
Several computer alarms did little to shake the skilled pilot as he calmly guided the spacecraft to its eventual landing on the surface. As the lander neared its intended landing spot, Neil noticed a disturbing fact. The lander was entering a stretch of land that was covered with large boulders. He quickly took action to steer the spacecraft to another spot that was safer for this historic landing.
Good. And 20 feet.
Finally, satisfied with the landing spot, and with only 25 seconds of fuel left, Armstrong set the Eagle down on the surface of the moon, becoming the first humans to land on the surface of another world.
4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. 20. Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward. Just. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent. Post control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. Port 13 is in. We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
After several hours of work to do while cooped up in the lunar module on the surface of the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin asked mission controllers in Houston if they could change the schedule a bit and begin their historic moonwalk sooner than planned. Houston was happy to agree, and the astronauts began to make their preparations to open the hatch of the lunar module. A short time later, Neil Armstrong worked his way down the 9-step ladder and stood on the landing pad of the lunar module.
Okay, Neil,
with 600 million people on Earth gathered around their televisions and millions more listening on the radio, the first human from Earth would step foot on the surface of an alien world.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Over the next 2.5 hours, Armstrong and Aldrin explored the surface of the moon next to the lunar module. They planted the American flag, set up scientific instruments, gathered 49 pounds of moon rocks, and shared a phone call with President Nixon. With Kennedy's original goal of sending a man to the moon firmly accomplished, it was time to complete the dream by returning them safely to this Earth. The lunar module successfully blasted off from the surface and eventually rendezvoused with the awaiting Michael Collins in the command module. 3 days later, the astronauts of Apollo 11 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, bringing this historic mission to a successful end. Over the next 3 years, 18 more American astronauts would make their way to the moon, with 10 of them following in Armstrong's footsteps on the surface of the moon. However, the history of the human race always celebrates the first to make major accomplishments, and Neil Armstrong would forever be remembered as the first to walk on the moon. In the days, weeks, and months following Apollo 11, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins would be celebrated as American heroes. Numerous ticker-tape parades were followed by meeting various celebrities, politicians, and dignitaries. The astronauts joined President Nixon at a state dinner that was attended by members of Congress, 44 governors, and ambassadors from 83 nations. They were awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and spent the next 45 days visiting 25 different countries. The 3 astronauts took their newfound fame in stride and represented our nation admirably. They understood that this was the dawn of a new era in our human history, a moment worthy of excitement and celebration. However, Neil Armstrong was a private man, a reluctant hero that always said he was just doing his job. Armstrong would never fly in space again after Apollo 11. He went on to teach at the University of Cincinnati in the Department of Aerospace and Engineering. Eventually, he left his teaching post to enter life in the corporate world of engineering, ultimately retiring in 2002. Along the way, he would serve his country once again when he was appointed to the advisory committee to investigate the Apollo 13 accident. and later in 1986, when President Reagan asked him to help investigate the Space Shuttle Challenger accident. Armstrong would forever be an American hero, but he would often shun the spotlight that came with being the first man to walk on the moon. He refused many interview requests and would only participate in the various anniversary celebrations of Apollo 11. He avoided many offers from various businesses to cash in on his fame and refused to capitalize on his historic accomplishment. In 1994, he stopped signing autographs when he learned that many of them were being auctioned off for large amounts of money. To Neil, his accomplishment represented an achievement for all mankind. It was the result of the hard work and efforts of all the people involved in the space program. With great humility, he always insisted that he was only doing the job he had been asked to do by his country. Neil Armstrong underwent surgery on August 7th to relieve blocked coronary arteries. On August 25th, he died due to complications resulting from that surgery. He was 82 years old. Our nation has lost an American icon. His motivations for his accomplishments in life were simply to be the best you could be, do the job you were given, and succeed at whatever you attempt. His role of accomplishing a feat that had only been dreamed of just a decade before and would become one of, if not the greatest accomplishments of modern humanity, would raise him to the great pantheon of human achievement. However, it is important to remember that in the mind of Neil Armstrong, he was performing the duties that were asked of him. He truly felt that he was simply making one small step as a man, and it was mankind that was making the giant leap, not Neil Armstrong. The press release provided by his family in the hours following his death has become a cherished and fitting tribute for those who knew him best. We are heartbroken to share the news that Neil Armstrong has passed away following complications resulting from cardiovascular procedures. Neil was our loving husband, father, grandfather, brother, and friend. Neil Armstrong was also a reluctant American hero who always believed he was just doing his job. He served his nation proudly as a Navy fighter pilot, test pilot, and astronaut. He also found success back home in his native Ohio in business and academia and became a community leader in Cincinnati. He remained an advocate of aviation and exploration throughout his life and never lost his boyhood wonder of these pursuits. As much as Neil cherished his privacy, he always appreciated the expressions of goodwill from people around the world and from all walks of life. While we mourn the loss of a very good man, we also celebrate his remarkable life and hope that it serves as an example to young people around the world to work hard to make their dreams come true, to be willing to explore and push the limits, and to selflessly serve a cause greater than themselves. For those who may ask what they can do to honor Neil, we have a simple request. Honor his example of service, accomplishment, and modesty, and the next time you walk outside on a clear night and see the moon smiling down at you, think of Neil Armstrong and give him a wink. Neil Armstrong was buried today in Ohio. Tonight, I dedicate our show to one of the few people in my life I dare to call my hero. Thank you for making your small step, Neil. It is a step that will someday ultimately lead to that giant leap for mankind that you spoke of from the surface of the moon.